Hello campers, this is just a personal video of my thoughts and feelings about the forthcoming EU referendum vote that's due to take place in the United Kingdom, obviously at the time of recording. Obviously this is just my own personal views and is not reflective of anyone or anything else, so please just take it as such. It's not the most imaginative or indeed well-referenced, researched, well-reasoned opinions out there, but frankly, considering everything else in the EU referendum and everyone else has been doing all sorts of crap involving it, I felt compelled to say something, so here it is. And if you like it, yay. If you don't, well, yeah, you take it for what it is. It's just me going meh 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 for about half an hour. It might be boring, it might be not, I don't know. It's just there for people to watch if they want to. Thanks very much, though, for watching in any case. Hello, campers. My name is Paul Hughes. And this is going to be an entirely off-the-cuff video with very little rehearsal or otherwise. I must admit I'm not entirely too sure what I'm going to be saying on this one. But don't worry, you're going to get to the crux of the matter very shortly. You can tell I'm not rehearsing this at all. I have no idea what I'm saying. And probably this mug is going to be very important over the course of this, because I'm going to be talking about the thing that's been going on in the news quite a lot recently, obviously as far as the UK goes and some of the world. The EU referendum is due to take place today, obviously. I'm saying today by the time this gets uploaded onto YouTube, but obviously right now I'm recording it the night before. And what the question is whether or not we should remain part of the European Union. There's obviously either we stay in the EU and accept various laws and all the rest of that, or we leave the EU and apparently take back control, which is the message that seems to be keep coming from the Leave Party, or campaign, whatever the fuck they're trying to be. I have no idea at this point. You see, one of the things that has got me about the entire EU campaign from both sides, where it's to remain in the thing or to leave the EU, it's that the level of duplicity and vague language that has come from both sides, more so on the Leave side, because we might do this, or we may get this deal, or we might be better off, that we may not lose any jobs, or we may lose some jobs. The whole vagueness of all the rhetoric that has been on the television and all social media, newspapers, everything, it's been complete and utter bollocks, frankly. And I will be happy one way or another when the whole sorry fucking affair is over with, because frankly it seems to have brought nothing but disharmony and bitterness to everything, just from what I've seen. And unfortunately, I mean, make no mistake about it, someone's actually died, it seems, as a result of some fucking idiot who has delusions in his head. I mean, fuck knows what's going on, but he was giving his name in court as Britain First or otherwise, but I don't know what was going on. No one knows what's going on in his head, but he used that as an excuse, it seems, to shoot an MP dead. A genuine what the fuck moment. It was like those poor people in Orlando where they had that fuck nugget come along and decide to gun down 50 or so people simply because he thought it was right for reasons or whatever. I mean, who cares? I mean, as far as society should go, they should be just treated as useless cunts who are brain dead. There's literally no beliefs that should bring you to that point where you think that killing people is worth it. But that unfortunately seems to have actually happened, either directly or indirectly as a result of all this crap going on. And yeah, it's not a good time, really, for a lot of things that are, in theory, we're supposed to actually be caring about, in terms of what route forward people are attempting to decide on whether or not we should stay in the current direction or go somewhere else. I mean, frankly, it's tiresome, and as I said, I can't wait for it to be over. But first of all, obviously, we've been inundated with all these bloody things. I mean, some of this is very funny. I mean, countries set to join the EU, and they got to Turkey there, but they got Syria and Iraq right next to it, and all this gubbins. My God, we're hemorrhaging money and all the rest of that horseshit. And then, well, it seems that the Remain thing has been a rather bigger leaflet with at least pretty pictures and shit. So that's something. This is from Labour. I mean, they just shoved it through the door today, so that's obviously how much they've been caring. I mean, this is kind of funny. Labour generally, bear in mind, this is literally my point of view from observing various bits of media and so on, but Labour seem to have not actually given a flying fuck until like a couple of weeks ago. Really? And they've started the Remain campaign, and actually to be honest, a lot of the campaigns. And people have just been wheeled out, all this, that, and the other, saying, oh, well, this, and that, and the other. But they seem to be, again, because of the vagueness of everything, you kind of wonder how much of it is true. And it turns out a huge amount of what's been said isn't true, especially actually from that other leaflet with that 350 million thing for the NHS. Apparently, after the rebate and everything else, it turns out to be 192 million or something less, or it's even less if you take into account research actually paid into various places. I don't know. I mean, it seems to be a load of accounting bollocks to me. I mean, why can't we just pay one bit and then just keep the money for whatever, right? I don't know. You see, this is why I'm not a politician, because I wouldn't... Well, actually, I'm not even an accountant. That's why I don't go into such matters. But it seems to be that it's all based on lies, treachery, and deceit, and I'm not even sure whose interest the referendum's actually been in. Because if you just look at the face of it, pretty much because the Leave campaign haven't got a fucking clue on what's going to happen should, people vote Leave, and they can't give any definite answers at all, nothing. We're voting for what exactly? I mean, I know everyone said the EU's not perfect. Of course it bloody isn't. No organisation or system ever set up by a human being has ever laid claim to being perfect, because fuck knows anything we humans do is not perfect. But there are some things that have actually been of benefit. I mean, I've obviously got to cover some of this up because I shouldn't show it all. But this little thing, the health insurance card, the EHIC thing. Yeah, there you go. Just made that nice and small. That thing, basically, wandering around Europe. Say I had a bit of a jippy tummy after a bad curry. I could go into a hospital, say, could you give us, some, Alka-Seltzer or some shit, and at least that would help cover some of the bill and so on. So it's quite handy. Another thing, cheaper flights. They opened up competition in the EU, so, cheaper flights internally and so on. I mean, whether you like them or not, I mean, would we have the flights provided by Ryanair, EasyJet, and Jet2 if that had not been the case? And in fact, it's enabled people to move around a little bit more freely. Speaking of which, we can move freely around Europe. We can go and work somewhere else in Europe, and obviously that's been used as a thing to hammer home about everyone coming here and stealing our jobs and all the rest of it. Although, mind you, I do subscribe to what Doug Stanhope said when he mentioned that whole subject. It was one of his stints where he was saying, well, basically, they came over here, took our jobs, And his response was, hang on, well, if someone was coming over, not speaking the language, and was doing your job better than you, what the fuck were you doing? So it's... I know that doesn't apply to every situation, but nevertheless, it always stuck with me, that joke, because somehow, yeah, you'd actually start thinking about that. So, it was... There's been a lot of bile about things. Yeah, I'll get on. I mean, I was saying about... It's very easy to get lost with all this stuff and get lost in trains of thought, because there's all sorts of things that will run in your head. And there's so many things you want to say and get across, and yet sometimes it's very difficult because it seems to be a fiery subject for everyone, but there's rarely been, especially throughout the campaigns, a point where you can reasonably discuss stuff like this. I mean, I tell you what, going back to the benefits type thing, you know, the working time directives. Now, in theory, and I've actually done this on a few occasions when I've worked in a couple of jobs in London, where I've just happily signed this away without even really understanding what it was. But what it was actually to try and make sure that you had rest, you had breaks, you know, had various rights to not be overworked in some regards. And well, it seems that was guaranteed by the EU, whereas, well, was there really such a guarantee made by the UK? There may have been other laws obviously passed or otherwise, but was this such a bad thing because it guaranteed this within every EU country that people were entitled to this sort of thing? I mean, it does raise a question about people on zero-hour contracts and how all that shit was allowed to get out of control. I mean, look at what happened with those poor bastards at Sports Direct and all the crap they had to put up with. And you wonder, why was no one intervening on that? Let alone, you know, the UK government or indeed the EU for any of that stuff. But apparently it's all perfectly fine. And people didn't seem to give a shit until recently. It took continuous pressure from various organisations and so on before we had the chairman of Sports Direct turn up before Parliament, and the Parliamentary Committee, I forget on what, and he basically admitted that he didn't know half of what was going on, in essence, in his own company, which I dare say made the shareholders feel infinitesimally better about the state of play. But I can't talk. I bought cheap trainers from Sports Direct, so I probably enabled the problem. There you go. Hypocrite. At least I can claim to be that, a hypocrite, if nothing else. But another, you know, there's quantifiable benefits that we silly people on the ground who obviously go to work for a living and then come home can actually state to. That I made a little list here. There's actually a little thing. I did try and planned some of this, but most of it, no, it's gone out the window. Here we are. Here's another thing, and this has actually benefited me as well. There's warranty on shit. Stuff sold under EU law. If it breaks within 2 years, you're actually entitled to, you know, a replacement or otherwise, and even send it back. You know, more often than not, people would be very much happy with, you know, just making sure there was only a 1 year warranty. But that's the thing, is again one of those things that were enforced, and it has benefited me in that there's been some crap products I bought, which, let's be honest, explains most of that shit behind me, that it broke and I was able to take it back, you know, without even breaking a sweat. And and another thing, just from the list, it was telephone calls abroad. Now, obviously, before the EU started tackling some of the things that were wildly all over the place with using data and mobile phones abroad, especially around Europe, you could get absolutely raped in terms of the bill that would be coming your way, even maybe just after a couple of days usage or otherwise. Whereas then they started capping it and bringing things down, and now it's actually affordable. I mean, don't get me wrong, £1.50 a day to still use data, okay, but it's a lot better than what it used to be. And I bet you all those people that go on holiday to the Costa del Sol and all the rest of that shit, they won't be thinking about that. I mean, I know obviously it's been used as a thing to say, can people be bought with things like that? Well, think about it. It's something we actually use. So, yes, we can be. I tell you one thing, I'd like the EU to sort out my fucking fibre. You know, if they could actually force BT to go off their fat asses and actually do something about that. But that's another story. You know, I can't say the EU are going to be any good for that. But, anyway, all this, you know, leaves me to say that, as it stands, I can't see any reason to vote for anything other than to remain in the EU. And try and sort it out, or you know, at least try and do some bits and bobs with it, because it'll never be perfect. And yes, trying to please everyone at the same time never works. Absolutely never works. But there is no tangible benefit provided by the Leave campaign as to why we go. I mean, this whole thing... You know, when I started talking complete bollocks about all this stuff at the beginning of the video, and they were saying, well, we can take back control, you know, and, you know, stoke up the immigration fire and make everyone, you know, xenophobic motherfuckers about everything. I'm not entirely sure is that true, because if they still wanted to be part of the free market for trading with the EU and all the rest of it, forgive me for sounding fickle in the village idiot, because I am. I go to work, I got other shit to do, so I'm not going to have the time to research all this stuff. But if we're still going to be part of the free trade bloc and all the rest of that stuff, doesn't that still mean that we have to be subject to the freedom of movement part of said agreements? I mean, I thought that was part of the thing with Canada, of why it's taken so long to negotiate, because obviously freedom of movement between Canadians and EU citizens is on the table. And to be perfectly honest, I'd be very happy if that was, because that technically means we don't have to worry about the point system if we wanted to go to Canada to work. We'd actually be free to move and work there. Which, given the fact it's the better version of America, you know, I know this is going to diss all the Americans and what have you, and that's rude. But it's just okay, while Donald Trump is a presidential candidate, I can say shit like this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if he actually gets in, fucking hell, that's going to cause all sorts of other problems, I think. Oh, dear. But anyway, no, it's just that the fact that might be an opportunity or otherwise, that'd be fantastic, you know, and it's... I don't know where they're getting this control the borders thing from, if that's truly what it would actually mean. Again, all ifs, buts, and everything else. It's again the ludicrous language of ambiguity that's been used by both sides, where it hasn't. I tell you what, the Remain campaign, they haven't helped themselves by saying, "You will suffer, you will burn by." If you leave, we will all die in a flame of our own money burning around us. Well, that gets tiresome because, well, we got enough shit to worry about in everyday life, and then you watch the news, and then you can see all that crap. You know when you had no money before, you're gonna have even less now. Vote for us. I keep thinking that it's two political parties going at each other, but no. It's kind of hard to differentiate, because I suppose there's been personalities at play. I mean, fucking hell, it's obvious that some people are trying to set themselves up for certain general elections coming up, shall we say, and various other lies, treachery, and deceit. Fucking career politicians. I mean, Jesus Christ, we got the Diet Coke version of Donald Trump and Boris Johnson now. I mean, this is the thing, I voted for him during the last mayoral election, before, obviously, this one where Sadiq Khan and Zach Goldsmith went at each other, and Zach Goldsmith basically, you know, tried to play the hate card, and it was fucking vile. It was... I don't know what. But I thought he was, a bit of a buffoon, but he had a few good ideas, and a few things, did improve. There was some things that were questionable, like certain developments being built with next to no affordable housing and what have you, but there were other things that were all right. So it could have been a lot worse. But now, with how Boris has behaved during this whole campaign for the Leave lot, which hopefully, after this, I kind of hope a lot of them do leave and never actually turn up on the news again. Because God knows we've had enough of them. Had enough of a lot of them. Bloody hell, yes. You can tell it's actually late at night when I'm recording this, because I'm talking more bollocks than usual. But yeah, it's been far too easy to get lost. I mean, as I said, there's no reason to vote for anything other than to remain in the EU, because it's just been all bollocks and everything else. And that's just from my perspective. It's not massively researched. It's just from what I've been exposed to from the various media that I consume on a daily basis, either reading news sites, watching television, or indeed social media on Facebook and Twitter. And that as well has been absolutely funny, because people have just been sharing all sorts of stuff left, right and centre, and I think about 75% of it has been complete bollocks, and this goes for either side, by the way, again. So I don't know. It just seems an utterly pointless referendum, really, given the choice. I don't know. It's kind of laughable, but I hope we don't end up just fucking ourselves over because of, delusions of grandeur, or delusions that saying England, or otherwise, like what happens in the football, because England won the World Cup that one time or whatever, and now even as Euro 2016 goes on, people are going, oh yes, we can do it, man, and all the rest of it. And well, no, if they do, then unfortunately you'll just inflate egos and shit, and well, I have no time for football. I think it's a load of shit at this point, but that's another story entirely. So anyway, campers, I'm going to try and round this up. This has been a long meme, but personally I think staying in the EU is the best call for simple reasons, as opposed to the big picture, because everyone's talked about the big picture. No one's really wanted to talk about the tiny picture, as in shit that we actually care about for us. Especially the thing about the working time directive thing. It would actually, that was one point that came up on the BBC. Say, would you not trust your own government to make sure that you have your decent rights and so on? Actually, no. At this point, you've seen what the fuckers have been doing. No. And, I'm sorry, there's stuff that comes in my head. Okay, I will make another point, and then I'll try and wrap that up. When people said the EU is unaccountable, there's no way we can unelect them or otherwise. That's true. In many respects, that is absolutely true. The closest thing you get is electing the members of the European Parliament, which, not entirely sure what the hell they do. I mean, it seems that Nigel Farage goes there and, racks up some nice expenses and then, insults people. I mean, well, that's basically what he does. To be honest, I suspect that's all he ever will do. But how accountable are our MPs, really? Because I wonder on some of them whether or not they're going to get reprimanded after all this, because it's been... Never before have you seen people with the same party fighting against each other or the rest of it. And they've got to work together, basically, no matter what happens as of next week. I'm sure we're all going to have faith in them that they're still going to actually, do what's best for us. And, the thing is, no matter how they've been, if they've been reprehensible or otherwise, how easy is it to get another general election? Well, not very. Because there is, well, back in the older parts of the coalition government, that I used to have great fun making jokes of, with Captain Dave Cameron at the helm, with First Mate Clegg. Does anyone miss Nick Clegg? That's a horrible thing to say. Ridiculously, they might have actually still brought some balance to the force. We don't know. They just got shit on in the last election anyway. But anyway, during the parts of the coalition government, they brought in what I believe is the Fixed Parliament Act. Now, what this means is that I think it's just in the case they were covering themselves with the coalition, but unfortunately then it carries on for everything else, is that every government will be in power basically for 5 years. And there has to be an overwhelming majority in the House of Commons to actually call for an election. So if the people say they want an election, the people that, they represent, have no faith in the government or otherwise, nope, that's not enough. The members of Parliament themselves actually have to vote for a general election to come early. So in some regards, how accountable are our MPs as a result? I'm just wondering. Because, well, how difficult is it to recall an MP if they've been bastard with their expenses? Some people have managed to do it. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I dare say it's not going to be a 2-minute process. So that's the point, isn't it? How accountable can you say our government is? Because once they've been elected, that seems to be it, unless there's, I don't know what has to happen for them to actually turn around and say, nah, sorry, this ain't working, we have to start all over again. And I don't think that will ever happen, frankly. So no matter what, a government is, in essence, only accountable once every 5 years. Granted, that's still more than probably the European Union side of things. But it's still a ridiculous long time. It's still a ridiculous time. I mean, the Americans, at least, say what you like, it's 4 years, so at least it's a little bit less. I mean, you could argue as well that they need a little bit more time to actually implement proper policies on the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not that open-minded, so, nah. I don't care. So, just with this European Union thing anyway, I just wonder if the politicians, because they're not really doing a decent enough job to actually communicate across what can and can't happen as a result of staying or going or otherwise, because they don't have a fucking clue. That's why it got left to the people with these lovely poll cards and all the rest of that shit. So obviously, if it goes wrong one way or another, we can all blame each other, as opposed to blame to the people who we elected to represent us and actually make sure that, shit's done in a reasonable manner, that sort of thing. It may as well get the tin foil out on that one, but there's just so much taint with this whole thing that I just want it over with, and hopefully we remain in the EU. If we don't, well, fuck it, we just have to roll with it, because frankly, there won't be anything else we can do. Although I may end up in Spain at this point. Just to hide away. If they refer to the Costa del Crime, fuck it, I'll be there selling hooky DVDs. Why not? But I've said what I thought about the whole thing anyway. Whatever happens, I can only say to you campers, just vote, at least. It doesn't matter what way you think or otherwise. I mean, at this point, it's already too late to change your minds or otherwise. You've had your minds made up for a little bit. Everyone has. I mean, people have been saying unsure or all the rest of it, but nah, they always have a gut feeling or otherwise, especially if they haven't got any real information or otherwise to go on. That's when they just go as to who's involved and all the rest. So we will see if the polls were right or if they were wrong massively again. I suppose that all this, but at the very least, whatever you decide to do, just vote at least and try and have a say. So at least you've got a chance of swinging stuff. Because, well, we'll be. I suppose in a way, if we choose to vote Remain, we can always have another referendum. Whereas if it's the other way around, apparently we can't or something. I don't know. I've said what I thought. I'm voting to remain in the EU. You campers, by all means, you do whatever you wish, because you have free will and shit. And it would be an insult to say, no, you should do this, no, you should do that. Or otherwise, it's, meh. What can I say? So that's that. It's a very odd video to just record willy-nilly and just rant on and talk about other random bollocks, and unfortunately some terrible things have happened over the past few weeks, actually, which is unfortunately, much like a lot of things that's happened in the world, that's life. Yay. So on that cheery note, thank you very much for even just listening to this waffle, and I'll see you all again very soon with hopefully some actual content, as opposed to me just dribbling onto a webcam for ages, completely unrehearsed, and making shit up as I go along. Pretty much like the campaigns, really, of the Remain and Leave, I'm not very good at satire at 20 to 12 at night. Anyway, campers, I'd love to hear some comments about this stuff anyway, just to know what you thought and why you maybe voted to stay in the EU or leave or otherwise. But it's for your own personal reasons, not for the ridiculous things that people are saying about, because everyone's got a different idea. And everyone's had, some people have lived in a deprived area of which it's done no good to them being in the EU, whereas others, they've benefited greatly because they get various things. Everyone's situation will obviously be different. And, we shouldn't badmouth anyone because, they're just doing what they think because, frankly, they haven't got much to go on. None of us really have. In the grand scheme of things, so we just go with it. Anyway, campers, that'll do it for me. Take it easy, and I'll speak to you all again very, very soon about some other live stretching to see. But until then, take it easy.